Tabarruk with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Does that exist? Yes. And the Salafi school, Salafi Wahhabi school also accepts that these hadith are authentic, but then they interpret it in a different way, as we're going to see inshallah in a moment. So Tabarruk with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And it's important to point this out because when people talk about shirk and bid'ah and don't overly exaggerate regarding the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we'll see the examples now, and then you can see about exaggeration, were the companions exaggerating or not. And for those who read what we're going to mention today, you can look at what we mentioned today and then compare it to Kitab al-Tawhid of Shaykh Muhammad bin Abdul Wahhab, and look at the chapter on Tabarruk that he has or related to it, and you can see the difference. That what he mentions, he won't mention, I don't think he mentions any of these. He mentions some of these narrations, but the ones that are pro-Tabarruk he doesn't mention at all in his book. So somebody studying that book will have a very distorted understanding. Obviously in the explanations, the teachers who explain the book might add in some of these narrations, obviously, just to be fair to them. But if you just read the book by itself, you'll see a very distorted view of Tabarruk. Anyway, moving on, because we've got quite a few slides. Companions' approach. So how did they approach the Prophet ﷺ and his physical being? We just had Badr, a commemoration of Badr passed recently, but on the Battle of Badr, the Prophet ﷺ, when he was lining up the companions, he was tapping them, and he tapped the companion in the stomach while lining them up, if I recall correctly. But what did the companion say? He said to the Prophet ﷺ, I want to take my revenge from you. So the Prophet ﷺ uncovered his stomach for him to take revenge. And then the companion, the Messenger of Allah ﷺ, uncovered his stomach and said, take your revenge, O Sawad. Sawad, however, embraced him and kissed his stomach. He ﷺ said, why did you do this? Sawad replied, O Messenger of Allah, you see what is before us, and I wish that my last moments be that my skin touches your skin. The Prophet ﷺ then made dua for him. And this is in a number of different works, and I don't think anybody denies that it happened. So this is what the companions' general view was, that making contact with the Prophet ﷺ's skin before they died. That was their approach. Carrying on blessed hair, Anas said, I saw the Messenger of Allah ﷺ whilst the barber shaved his head, his companions circled him. The Arabic there for circled him is actually from the same word as tawaf. Not that you can make tawaf of the Prophet ﷺ, but they were actually circling, ready to pounce as it were, only wishing that they obtained some hairs. And this is in Sahih Muslim. So this once again, when people talk about exaggeration, is this exaggeration or not? Okay, and you can imagine some of the companions there, very, very rugged, tough individuals, and they're all trying to obtain their hair. Okay, so it's not for the faint-hearted as well at that time. Blessed sweat. The Prophet ﷺ visited us. This is a part of a longer hadith. He took a nap and began to sweat. As he slept, my mother began to collect his sweat in a flask. The Prophet ﷺ awoke and said, O Sulaym, what are you doing? She said, this is your sweat which we place in our perfume, and it is the best perfume. And this is in Sahih Muslim. So even the sweat of the Prophet ﷺ, the companions would collect it and use it as perfume. Blessed spittle. So when he ﷺ would spit, so this is during wudu, the companions would catch his spittle and wipe it on their faces and bodies whilst he was watching. So he was watching this happening. He didn't tell them, what are you doing? You're committing shirk, or you're getting close to shirk, sorry. That's what the Salafis say. You're going towards exaggeration and praise for the righteous. Whilst he was watching, and when he performed wudu, they were almost fighting over the water flowing off his body. So I would assume, just two or three people or a number of people just pushing each other out the way, tried to get that water that was flowing off the body. And the Prophet ﷺ was watching this, and he did not reprimand them. And this is in Sahih Bukhari as well. And the blessed cup, the Prophet ﷺ came and sat in the garden of Bani Sa'da along with his companions, and then said, pour water for us, O Sahel. I brought out this cup. So Sahal afterwards is showing this cup. I brought out this cup and gave them to drink from it. Abu Hashim said, Sahal took out that cup and we drank from it, seeking blessings from the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and they say Bukhari. So drinking from a cup that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam drank from. Blessed well, Mu'jam al-Tabarrani, Malik bin Hamza bin Usaid al-Sa'idi al-Khazraji from his father, from his grandfather Abu Usaid, who had a well in Medina called the well of Buda'a, in which the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam had spat, and he used to drink from it and seek blessings. So this is seeking blessings from the well. Al-Haythami said it was narrated by Tabarrani, and its narrators have all been declared trustworthy, and there's weakness in some of them, so it's an authentic narration. The blessed minbar of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Ibn al-Muflih, who's a great Hanbali scholar, he said he, Ahmad, so Imam Ahmad permitted it for the minbar, meaning touching the minbar and wiping it, because Ibn Umar would place his hand on the seat of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and then place it on his face. Ibn Zaghuni and others said he should come to the minbar and seek blessings from it, seeking blessing from the one who would ascend it. So this is a companion of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam wiping the minbar, the seat of the minbar, wiping his face. Sayyidina Ibn Umar. Obviously the minbar, I believe, doesn't exist anymore. It was burned in a fire, and I don't know what happened to the remains of it, but when it did exist, that was what was taking place with the minbar, and from a companion of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So you see the examples there. Anything which the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam sat on, they would be rubbing that place and rubbing their face. Thus Ibn Umar, the Salafi school accepts that he did do this. What do their scholars mention, however? The permanent committee in Saudi Arabia, they said, as for that which is narrated from Ibn Umar regarding the wiping of the minbar, then it is not permitted to regard it as a proof because it goes against the established evidence. So this is an interesting example of where they say, give us an example from companions. You give them an example and then they say, well, no, there's other evidences that it conflicts with, supposedly, which we'll see in a moment. They said it conflicts with their Sayyidina Umar's practice, so therefore we don't accept it. And we'll see that Sayyidina Umar's practice was for a different reason. So that's an interesting example of a companion's hadith that they reject. So that give us an evidence, we provide an evidence, and they say no, you need to give us all the companions doing it, which is just not really feasible in Islamic law. Carrying on, kissing the noble grave. Now there's two scenarios to this that is going to be mentioned now. The first scenario is that is done as an act of worship which is directed to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. There is agreement that this is not permitted and is shirk. How many people would actually do this? Actually go and kiss the grave or try to kiss the grave of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam as an act of worship directed towards the Prophet alaihi salatu wasallam. That is shirk, and it's highly unlikely that would take place as far as we know. Number two, that this be done in the context of the Tabarruk from his traces, Athar, and there is a difference of opinion between the people of learning regarding this. Some permitted and others forbade. Those who forbade said that this is bad manners. It's not possible to do it now, to actually kiss the actual grave of the Prophet ﷺ, but somebody might go up to near the grave and try to kiss the walls, etc. Or the walls, etc. That kind of thing. So there's a difference of opinion there. Our scholars generally say, the Hanafi school says it's not permitted. But the reason why I mention that difference of opinion is because people, for some reason, are labeling it as shirk if they do see it. So, for example, the Chechen leader that was kissing some walls, etc. And he was probably working on the basis that it's permitted. And they obviously left him alone. But anyway, so obviously we don't do that. But mentioning because when people go to one extreme, then you have to sometimes balance it out by mentioning the other views. Okay, so the Hanafi school, what did they say about graves generally? And the Prophet ﷺ's grave. Hasha tahtawi Hanafi, do not touch the grave, do not kiss the grave, for this is the practice of people of the book. So we don't touch graves, we don't kiss graves. Fatawa al-Hindiya, then draw closer to the grave, the distance of 3 or 4 cubits. So cubits is an arm length, so about 2 meters, and not more than this. So don't go closer than this to a grave. Do not place the hand on the wall of the tomb, and stand as you would in prayer. That's when you're giving salam. And this applies to general graves as well, as far as I know. And Manasik Mullah al-Qari, do not touch the wall when visiting, meaning it contravenes adab at the place of reverence. Likewise, do not kiss it. So they said, so the argument there is that don't touch the wall or kiss the wall because it's lack of respect as opposed to being shirk. So they forbade people from doing this. That's a Hanafi view. And then those who declared it permissible, and we're mentioning this because of some extremism in some people. Muhibbuddin Tabri al-Shafi said it's permitted to kiss the grave and touch it, and upon this is the practice of the scholars and the pious. Shahabuddin al-Khafaj al-Hanafi said in his commentary on the Shifa, this matter is not agreed upon, meaning about kissing the grave of the Prophet ﷺ. Due to this, Ahmad and Tabari said there is no harm in kissing and embracing it. So Imam Ahmad, there is a version from him saying that it's permitted to touch the grave and kiss the grave. However, the Hanbali scholars said that's a weaker position, but it is narrated from him. So we don't follow these opinions, by the way, but we're just mentioning them. Allama Zarqani al-Maliki said kissing the noble grave is disliked except for the intention of Tabarruk, in which case it is not disliked. So we don't follow those opinions, but we just mention them because of certain people holding certain harsh views.